president is known to see himself as his own best spokesperson, his own best messenger. That was clearly a challenge that Sean had at this podium. How do you plan on navigating that differently than him or Mike Duffy or anybody else?
I do believe that the best messenger, the best media person, the most savvy person in the White House is the President of the United States, and I'm frankly hoping to learn from him as well as learn from Sara and other people.
There's the new White House Communications Director, Anthony Scaramucci, being questioned by New York Times correspondent, White House correspondent Maggie Haberman, also CNN political analyst. She is here this morning on the roundtable, along with Joshua Green, senior national correspondent for Bloomberg Business Week, the author of the new book, Devil's Bargain. Oh, they went to Eric Bolling's book first. That's The Swamp. Eric Bolling is next from Fox News.
Call him the
joking. You think that President Trump likes Eric's book a little bit better than he likes Josh's book. We also have Republican strategist and CNBC analyst Sara Fagen, and Roland Martin, the host and managing editor of NewsOne Now. And of course, Maggie, you had that explosive interview with President Trump right in the middle of the week. You know, healthcare is going down on Monday and Tuesday. He's shaking up his legal team. They say it's sort of Made in America week in the White House, yet the president gives you this interview where he takes on Jeff Sessions, he takes on Robert Mueller, he takes on the Deputy Attorney General, sort of off message one more time, but then I question myself, not off message at all. He said exactly what he wanted to say.
Right. I think this is the part where people get tied up with this president, is there's always this assumption that he didn't mean to say this or it was some accident. He was given the opportunity repeatedly by Hope Hicks, who was sitting in that interview with us, to not answer questions if he didn't want to. Other advisors raised concerns about us coming in the days before. It went straight to the president. He overruled them. He wanted to do this interview, or he wanted to at least have the possibility there. And while what is going on in his head might not make sense to some of his staff or some observers or some critics, he knew what he was doing. I mean, I don't know that had a conclusion. I don't know that had a clear path. In his mind, he often throws these things out, as you know, to get off of another story. In this case, it was getting off of, I think, his son and refocusing it on to other issues. This is also something he really believes. Peter Baker and I had written several weeks ago. This all goes back to Jeff Sessions. That is sort of the original creation moment in the president's mind of how we got to Mueller, and that has not changed for him.
It hasn't changed at all. I guess the question is, I think you're right, he knows exactly what he's doing. Does he understand the impact? And let me bring that question to you, Eric Bolling. Perhaps the president wants to get it off Don Jr., but it guarantees one more week of complete focus on Russia.
Look, I think Maggie's incorrect in that he didn't need to do that. He didn't need to sit down with the New York Times for an hour to do that. He could have tweeted about it. What Donald Trump does, President Trump does, is he moves forward. He moves the media. He moves the story forward. He stays in the news. I will tell you unequivocally, I spoke to him yesterday. He's very frustrated about Russia being the focus of everyone's conversations. Right. When he would like to focus on other things. He'd like to talk about other things, but it doesn't. The media never gets there. He sits down with the New York Times. What happens? They talk about Russia.
But Eric,
allow me just to finish this. The Sessions thing is on his mind. When I spoke to him yesterday, he is concerned that, hey, he appointed Jeff Sessions. He shook his hand and said, you're the Attorney General.
Then how do you explain Sara Sanders? I want to move on to Roland. How do you explain Sara Sanders coming out and saying the president has confidence in Jeff Sessions? From talking to you, from talking to Maggie Haberman, he does not have confidence in Jeff Sessions.
I didn't say he didn't have confidence. He's frustrated that had he known that Jeff was going to recuse himself within days of being appointed over a handshake on a receiving line in a book event, that he probably wouldn't be the Attorney General.
This is very simple for this president and his administration. If you want to stop hearing about Russia, stop lying. Stop changing stories. Actually tell the truth. As George said to Sara, multiple stories. We have Donald Trump Jr. who changes his story from Saturday to Sunday, and it keeps changing.
What is the story? What is the Russia story? I'm still waiting to find one story that has legs. One credible. It's all fake.
One second. This is the story. Donald Trump Jr. says, we got money from Russia. The president says we didn't. Eric Trump said it as well. Donald Trump Jr. says to Jake Tapper in an interview that, oh, it's disgusting. They're discussing. We had meetings about Russia with the campaign. Now we know from his own email he did. No.
But there are no
Sara Fagen.
I didn't use the word
collusion. There may or may not.
There's not.
There may or may not be a real story or any there, but the reality is there's now a special counsel, and the best thing for the president to do is to not go do interviews and talk about Russia, but to talk about his agenda and let his lawyers, Mr. Sekula, very capable this morning, let his lawyers talk about this, and he should stop talking about it.
Good luck with that.
Don't threaten a special prosecutor.
You also see the strains that Trump is under. There are a lot of advisors that do want him to defer to the legal team, but on the other hand, he has his son has hearings coming up with the Senate.
Son-in-law has hearings.
Son-in-law has hearings this week, and I think Trump wants to raise questions about the validity of this line of questioning in anticipation that this is going to be in the news, is going to get focused on. I can't stop it, but I can certainly raise questions.
So you can't have it both ways, though. You can't constantly complain about the Russia story and then constantly talk about it.
That's what he does.
You have to. He has to choose a path.
No, he doesn't complain. He complains about the media's treatment of his presidency. The media only cares about Russia. It literally
because he talks about it every day.
I would not have had my first question to Jay Sekulow this morning had the president not tweeted about Russia yesterday. Let me bring this back to Maggie Haberman right now. In the midst of all this, a big White House shakeup as well. One apparently that the president did, and it's kind of a theme here. It sure seemed like most of the White House didn't know that the president was sitting down with you. It seems like most of the White House did not know that Anthony Scaramucci, including the White House Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus, until the end, that he was coming in as communications director.
Just to clarify, Sarah, I thought you were initially talking about Scaramucci. Most people in the White House knew that the Times was coming in. I mean, whether it was going to go on the record or not, I think was a different issue. But they did know, and there has been this narrative out there that they didn't. That's not true. In terms of Scaramucci, that is true. I mean, this basically was a direct negotiation between Anthony Scaramucci and President Trump, and they have known each other for a very long time. They've had a sort of contentious at times relationship because Scaramucci had backed other horses. But basically, the president has been very frustrated by his messaging team, and that is really what this all goes back to. Part of why it is that you see him tweeting, why it is that you see him giving interviews, he feels like people are not accurately representing what he thinks or are not defending him well, so he does it himself. And in terms of Scaramucci, the piece of this that I think is hard to ignore is, and you saw Sarah talking about this, the president is consumed with frustration about leaks, and he blames a lot of the leaking on some members of the current staff. He believes that this change is going to help that. Whether it will, we'll see.
One of the things, Josh, your book is about Steve Bannon in large part. Lots of reports that he was vociferously opposed to this appointment, even as he's taken a step back in the White House. And I've also read that the president not all that happy with Bannon after hearing about your book.
Well, I haven't heard from him directly, but absolutely, Bannon got steamrolled by this appointment. He and Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, had tried to intervene. Apparently, at that point, Scaramucci had already been told by the president that he had the job, so they were unable to do that. But I think Scaramucci's first press conference was revealing of what it is that Trump would like to see on TV. I viewed it as almost a tuning fork. You could listen to it and hear the notes that Trump wants his advisors to strike. That he's brilliant, that he is underappreciated, that he's not getting a fair shake from the media, from Democrats, that he has good karma, as Scaramucci put it, that he's a great athlete even. And I think that show of fealty is something that makes other advisors in the White House very nervous.
Here's what something the president should do. Be honest with your staff. You cannot send your people out to represent you, and then you come back and tell a totally different story like you did with Lester Holt, and then go, oh, you're not doing your job. Be honest with them. That's a start. It's
going to be really interesting to watch how Anthony Scaramucci does in this job. You know, my experience with people who are very wealthy, as he is there comes a point where they don't care and they don't need the guy down the hall, and that's unusual for a staffer to be in. And so this dynamic between the communications director and the president certainly is off on a very good foot. We'll see where it ends up.